So warming up today, we want to just make sure that you have the student work that you guys have been working on using the constructed responses. And what, since the last time that we've met, have you implemented for having gone through some of that item analysis that we did last week and kind of that common scoring that we've done? Let's just warm up with that.
I've been using it more for feedback when I'm going over their responses with them and then showing them the rubric. I have no problem opening it and going through it so they can see how it's graded, so there's transparency. Because I don't want them to feel like, oh, Miss Wissing just grades it how she wants. I want them to know that I score it against a solid rubric and they have access to that rubric now so they know what they're getting.
So you're using it with students as feedback and sharing that with them using the rubric. Okay. I don't think, we didn't really go through our norms that we typically have, but would somebody feel comfortable taking notes on the agenda this morning for us?
Yeah, I can. I'm already there, so.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody? Let's do one more maybe.
One of the things that I noticed my students in their responses, they were not analyzing one of the standards that they should have been in their response for the reading standard, where they compare central ideas and they talk about how two authors approach a similar topic. And so when I went through the responses, I actually had my sticky notes of two different groups of what we call bubble students, where they're between proficient and basic. So I looked at the responses, and based on that feedback, I worked with small groups of students with a graphic organizer for R9, which was the talking about two authors. So here's an example of walking through their graphic organizers where it asked about the central idea of two different central ideas and the details then that helps them figure out that central idea. And then they went back and they wrote a new response based on the articles that we used. So then I could really see, are they proficient in that R9 then? So I went back through and had them practice this graphic organizer and then rewrote a response based off of that. And then I used my sticky note to kind of cross out and reorganize those students with their small groups then.
Did you want to share?
Sure, I can. So I did something very similar to what Ashley did, but I did a model write. So I noticed that the one area that my kids struggled with was analyzation too, explaining their thinking. So I went back and I did a group model write, modeling what analyzing looks like, and then I showed them student work that's proficient or advanced so that they could see what that looks like. And then I gave them examples of a basic, a proficient, and an advanced, and I had them analyze that and look at it and say, which one of these examples is basic, which one of these examples is proficient, and which one of these examples is advanced, and why? And then they had to provide that. And we did a quick activity with that, and then we went back and we did a group written response. So they were working in groups, and so then I'm hoping to see some of that carry over into their next response.
So terrific. That learning and that common scoring, when we think about how do students know the standards that we've taught, we spent a lot of time looking at student work last week. And then each of you with your own voice interpreted it differently. Do you see any results for having done something different with these students? Mm-hmm. What is that?
I got a lot of feedback from my students when we went over the rubric and I explained, this is why you're not proficient. You didn't hit this and you didn't hit this. And a lot of them gave me the feedback, I wish I had more time. And so I'm taking their feedback, and what I'm doing is I'm going to split the book responses up just a little bit into the phases and give them the time they need. But I'm also kind of front loading them to make sure that they're finding the evidence for that up front.
When I worked with my R9 students, because it was their analyzing piece, I noticed that because they're R9, they weren't able to do that proficiently on their own independently the first time. And through the conferring and looking at their new revised responses, I found out that they weren't proficient in like R6 or, like point of view and like the structure and author's purpose. So we're going back then and I'm finding other standards that are maybe basic it and trying to hit those so then they can hopefully grow in those lower standards, like 1 through 8, if they can get to 9. And so then I'm just regrouping those students and focusing on other interventions that I can then be working with those students on to hopefully grow those. But then the students that were proficient with the reteaching of the R9, I've moved on with them, and so they are working on different standards with their small group.
And we started district assessments this week, so the only writing that I've got is from the classified interventions that we're doing. And with that, that's my 5-6. And with that classified intervention, I looked at it this past weekend, and the analyzing piece is stronger. I wouldn't say that it's 70% proficient, but it's definitely stronger than what it was before you.
Excellent. That's a good bridge that you brought up, that class-wide intervention, and I feel like we need a little more support, a little more thinking about that. And so I wanted to bridge what we did last week with the student work, and I linked on our agenda something that's called item analysis, and this is something that I could do for you as well. But I want you to kind of pop that open if you wouldn't mind, please. And what you see is one teacher at this building, one section. It's about half done. I read for those pieces and then put it on a spreadsheet, and there was an overall score. And I thought what I would do to help you and then give you it's just an idea. It's not something that I'm requiring you to do. But I want us to kind of think about what could, not a class-wide intervention, but what's a core lesson that needs to occur, because this is core. And then when we see more than, for example, 60% of kids, as you can see from this, not proficient, that's not something a class-wide intervention is going to fix. That's something that's something that the instruction that all kids need. That's part of that universal tier. So I want you to kind of be thinking about that, what that might be, and then what are most kids missing? That's where we would land within the class-wide intervention. Okay? And that would be a class-wide intervention if this class on the SRI wasn't at 60%. So let me just talk a little bit about why I set it up this way. I wanted to read it for individual students, but I didn't want to just necessarily put a score, because a score doesn't tell me the whole story. I want to know, this would probably inform some feedback that I would give to a student if I were to work with them one-to-one in a conferring structure, or it may inform small group instruction if I needed that. But more importantly, for this particular purpose that I told you, it's going to inform the common misconceptions that all these students have, because you can see predominantly the class so far is not proficient. They're basic on this piece of student work. And I have a couple different hypotheses that I'll share with you from that, and it really has to do with a couple different things. Number one, is there clarity around what we are expecting when we ask kids to respond to something that they've read? Are students clear? The other thing is its administration. Is there another way to administer this that might change the way students answer or write in this particular piece of student work? So when we look at this, you can see that there is a large proportion of the N, or the sample that I've given you, that would seem to be proficient in phase 1. That means key ideas and details. On or around those, what does the text say when we think about text dependency? And some are even advanced because